Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. I'm Hasham. In this video, I'm going to explain you about the residential status of an SSC. Previous two videos I've completed agricultural incomes exempted from tax. All these things I've explained in the last video. If you have not watched that, I suggest you to go to the playlist of my channel. Select the subject income tax for the assessment year 21-22. Watch those videos, be acquainted with the provisions of Income Tax Act regarding agriculture income and exempted incomes. Now in this video, I'm going to take up a very important topic, that is residential status. So before explaining the term residential status, take a screenshot of the points which I have written on the board, then I'll explain all the points. Now I'm going to start the topic residential status. Actually, the income earned during the previous year is chargeable to tax in the assessment year. Our current assessment year is 21-22. Current assessment year. For this assessment year, the previous year is 2021. 2020-2021. That is the previous year. So whatever income earned during the previous year is taxable in the assessment year. The scope of the total income depends on the residential status of an SSC. So every previous year it has to be determined what is the residential status. It will decide the scope, which incomes are to be included, which incomes are to be excluded. That means some SSCs may have the Indian income, some SSCs may have Indian income as well as foreign income. Now question arises whether only Indian income is taxable or Indian income as well as foreign income is taxable. What is the scope? That depends on the residential status of the SSC. Citizenship, nothing has to be done with Income Tax Act. Income Tax Act is not bothered whether SSC is an Indian citizen or a foreign citizen. It simply see what is the residential status during the previous year. Citizenship will be determined by the constitution of the country, whereas this residential status will be determined according to the provisions of the Income Tax Act. The purpose of residential status is to determine the tax liability, whereas the purpose of citizenship is to find out the fundamental rights. So we should not get confused that citizenship has something to be done with Income Tax Act. Nothing. Only residential status. Now, if the residential status of the person is resident, then he has to pay the tax on global income. If a person is a resident, ordinary resident in India, he has to pay the tax on the global income. Global income means wherever he has earned the income, he has to pay the tax in India. Whether it is Indian income or foreign income. On both incomes, he has to pay the tax in India because he is ordinary resident. Suppose if the person is non-resident, he has to pay the tax only on Indian income. Foreign income is not taxable. That is a broad rule you have to remember. Now, citizenship of a person does not determine the residential status. Just now I told you, citizenship will be determined by the constitution. Whereas for every assessment year, the residential status of an SSC for the relevant previous year is to be determined. It is not, like that once we have determined the residential status, it will be over. Every year, the SSC's residential status have to be determined, because it may happen in 1 year a person may be ordinary resident, next year he may be a non-resident. The residential status may change from year to year. So every year it is required to be determined what is the residential status. Now, Section 6 of the Income Tax Act 1961 has given the provisions regarding determination of residential status. And for determining residential status, the persons have been classified as follows. Income Tax Act says if you want to determine the residential status, the persons are classified into individual, HUF, firms or association of persons, companies or every other person. The Income Tax Act has given separate rules how to determine the residential status of an individual, how to determine the residential status of HUF, how to determine the residential status of firms, companies, every other person. in examination, a theory question normally will be asked regarding explain the provisions regarding residential status under section 6 of the Income Tax Act. So whatever I am discussing now, if you remember, you can be able to write in examination. And apart from that, next video I am going to solve the problems on residential status. So watch this theory with full concentration, otherwise you cannot be able to solve the problems. Now, first of all, residential status of individual. More provisions are there regarding how to determine the residential status of individual. So resident and ordinary resident, resident but not ordinary resident, and non-resident. So residential status of an individual can be of three types. An individual may be resident and ordinary resident. Second, an individual may be resident but not ordinary resident. Third, an individual may be non-resident. So any one of these may occur for an individual. Now, how to determine that? For determining the residential status of individuals, there are two sets of conditions: basic conditions and additional conditions. Income Tax Act says if you want to determine the residential status of an SSC, of an individual, two sets of conditions has to be tested, has to be checked. The first set of conditions are called basic conditions. Second set of conditions are called additional conditions. And two rules are given. Two rules are given for basic conditions and two rules are given for additional conditions. By applying these rules, we can be able to determine whether the SSC is resident and ordinary resident, or resident but not ordinary resident, or non-resident. So these sets of conditions we have to apply. Now, first of all, to determine whether a person satisfies the basic condition or not. First of all, in order to determine the residential status of an individual, basic conditions have to be checked. Basic conditions are two conditions, two rules are there. We have to check that. If he satisfies one or both of the two basic conditions, he will be called resident. Concentrate here. If an SSC satisfies one of the basic conditions or both the basic conditions, he will be called resident. Right? If a person fails to satisfy any of the two basic conditions, he will be treated as non-resident. The first rule very clear. We have to check the basic conditions. If an SSC satisfies one or both the basic conditions, any one of the basic condition or both the basic condition, he will be called resident. If an SSC does not satisfy any of the basic condition, he will be called non-resident. First rule completed. Now, if the status of a person is resident, then only apply the test of additional conditions. These additional conditions we will check only if the status is resident. Suppose if the status is non-resident, no need to go for additional conditions. Additional conditions are applicable only for resident SSCs. That point you have to remember. If the status of a person is resident, then only apply the test of additional condition. If an SSC is a non-resident, then the additional conditions are not at all to be applied. Forget. Next, if an individual satisfies both the additional conditions, then he will be treated as resident and ordinary resident. First, we have to check whether he is resident or non-resident. If he is a non-resident, there itself we will stop. We will not go for additional. We will stop there itself. He is a non-resident. If he is a resident, then we have to go and test for additional. If an SSC satisfies both the additional conditions, he will be treated as resident and ordinary resident. That means the SSC has satisfies one or both basic condition. He has become resident. Then we have checked the additional conditions. He satisfies both the additional conditions. He will become a resident and ordinary resident. Last one, if an SSC satisfies any one or none of the two additional conditions, then he will be considered as resident but not ordinary resident. Now, if an SSC satisfies one or both the basic condition, he will be called resident. Now we have to check the additional conditions. If he satisfies any one additional condition or none of the additional condition, he will be treated as resident but not ordinary resident, because he is not satisfying both the conditions. Both additional conditions must be satisfied in order to become ordinary resident. If he does not satisfy both additional conditions, he will be treated as a resident but not ordinary resident. That's all. Now, basic conditions. Till now I explained you that in order to determine the residential status of an individual, two sets of condition, basic and additional, two rules in basic, two rules in additional. That I have discussed. Now what are the rules of basic conditions? Now I am going to explain. Basic condition. The first rule of basic condition is he is in India in the relevant previous year for a minimum period of 182 days. During the current previous year, relevant previous year, the SSC must stay in India for a period of 182 days or more. During the 365 days, he must stay in India for 182 days or more. Then only he will satisfy the first condition. If he stays in India for less than 182 days, he will not satisfy the first condition. Now, second condition, he is in India for a period of 60 days or more during the relevant previous year and 365 days or more during 4 years preceding the relevant previous year. Two basic conditions are there. The first basic condition says he must stay in India for 182 days or more during the previous year. First condition. If he is not satisfying the first condition, we have to check the second condition. We have to check the second condition. That's why or. First or second. Any one of the condition, if the SSC satisfies, that is enough. He will become a resident. Second basic condition says he must be in India for 60 days during the current previous year and 365 days or more during 4 years preceding the relevant previous year. Our current previous year is 2021. Current previous year is 2021. 2020-21. This is the current previous year. During the current previous year, he should stay in India for 60 days or more. Second condition I will explain. 60 days. During 4 years preceding the relevant previous year. This is the relevant previous year. Before this will come to 19, 20, 18, 19, then 17, 18, 16, 17. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 years, he must stay in India for 365 days or more. The current previous year 60 days and 4 years preceding the relevant previous year 365 days or more. This is the second condition. Any one of these conditions must be satisfied by the SSC, then he will become resident. If an SSC does not satisfy first condition or second condition, he will be called a non-resident. He will be called a non-resident. We should not go for additional. We'll stop there itself. Right? So these are the two basic conditions. Now special category. Income Tax Act has given some special category of SSCs. Who are the special category? In the following three situations, the provision of special category will apply. What are the three situations? An Indian citizen left to the foreign country. An Indian citizen is there who is going abroad for a job normally. So an Indian citizen who is going abroad for a job, that is the first special category. Second special category is citizen of India who left as crew in the ship. Crew means the staff employees who are working in an aeroplane or ship. So the crew members of an aeroplane or a ship, second special category. Third, an Indian citizen came to India on visit. An Indian citizen who is working abroad and during the relevant previous year, he visited India. These three situations are called special category situation. What are the three? First one, an Indian citizen who left India during the year, during the current previous year. Secondly, the crew members of a ship or an aeroplane. Third one, an Indian citizen who is working abroad but visited in India during the current previous year. These are the three special categories. So what is the rule for special category? Basic condition for special category is only the first basic condition of 182 days or more will apply for special category of persons. So for these three special category of persons, only the first basic condition will apply, that is 182 days. The second basic condition, 60 days, will not apply for special category of persons. Now I am coming to the additional conditions. First we have checked the basic condition. First basic condition, 182 days or more during the relevant previous year. Second, 60 days or more during the relevant previous year, and 365 days or more during 4 years preceding the relevant previous year. So if a person satisfies any one or both the basic condition, he will be called resident. After determining a resident, we have to see whether he is an ordinary or not ordinary resident. For that purpose, we have additional conditions. What the first additional condition? The additional conditions are to be applied only if the status is resident. First one, he has been resident in India for 2 out of 10 previous years preceding the relevant previous year. Our current previous year is 2021. This is the relevant current previous year. Before this, last 10 previous years, he must be in a resident in at least 2 out of 10. At least 2, minimum 2 years, he must be a resident in India out of 10 years, right? Suppose if he is a resident only in 1 year, then he is not satisfying the first condition. At least 2 means out of 10 previous years, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Any number of years, he should be resident in India. At least 2. Second, he has been in India for a period of 730 days or more during 7 years preceding the relevant previous year. The second additional condition says, during the last 7 years, before the current previous year, our current previous year is 2021. Before this 2021, 7 years you go back. During that 7-year period, he must be a resident, he must stay in India for 730 days. So if a person satisfies both the additional conditions, first additional condition, he should be a resident in 2 out of 10 previous years preceding the relevant previous year. Second, he must stay in India for 730 days or more during 7 years preceding the relevant previous year. So if a person satisfies both additional conditions, he will be called ordinary resident. Resident and ordinary resident. If he satisfies any one or none, if he does not satisfy both, or if he satisfies only one, he will be called resident but not ordinary resident, because he is not satisfying both additional conditions. If an individual satisfies both additional conditions, then he will be treated as resident and ordinary resident. If an individual satisfies any one or none of the additional condition, then he will be considered as resident but not ordinary resident. That's all. So these are the rules regarding determining the residential status of an individual. So more provisions are there regarding this, whereas the provisions of Hindu undivided family, firms or companies, less provisions are there. That we'll discuss now. But here till now I have explained you about how to determine. In examination, very frequently theory question will be asked. Explain the provisions regarding determination of residential status. So this video will be very much helpful. So watch video twice, thrice. Then you'll get all the points. You can write in examination excellently main provisions of residential status.